The massive transport ship. Destiny's Edge shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace near the HFY station. Captain Sarah Chen gripped her command chair as the artificial gravity fluctuated, sending loose equipment floating momentarily before crashing back down. "Status report!" she called out, her voice steady despite the chaos around her bridge. "Hull integrity holding, Captain," replied Lieutenant Torres from the engineering station. "But we've got massive system failures across decks 7 through 12. Life support is running on backup power." Chen's jaw tightened. 3 weeks ago, the Destiny's Edge had been humanity's pride, a deep space exploration vessel carrying 1,500 crew members on mankind's first journey beyond the solar system. Now it was a crippled wreck, limping toward the only structure they'd found in this godforsaken corner of space. "Incoming transmission, Captain," announced Communications Officer Kim. It's not human." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a creature that made Chen's blood run cold. The being stood nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws. Its reptilian skin gleamed under harsh lighting, and its eyes, 3 of them, glowed with an unsettling yellow light. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Human vessel, you have entered HFY space without permission. I am Commander Zixthul of the Galactic Enforcement Division. Your ship will be boarded and your crew processed according to galactic law." Chen stood slowly, squaring her shoulders. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel, Destiny's Edge. We're not here by choice. Our ship is damaged and we need assistance. We mean no harm." The alien's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Harm? You speak of harm?" The creature leaned closer to its screen. "Your species is unknown to us, which means you are unregistered. Unregistered species have no rights under galactic law. You will surrender immediately." "Like hell we will," Chen muttered under her breath, then spoke louder. "We're explorers, not invaders. Surely there's some kind of diplomatic process." "Silence!" Zixthul's roar filled the bridge. "You will dock at Bay 7. Any resistance will result in the immediate destruction of your vessel. You have 10 minutes. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Chen looked around at her crew. Good people who'd volunteered for humanity's greatest adventure, now facing an impossible situation. "Captain," Torres spoke quietly, "our weapons are offline. We've got maybe 6 functioning shuttles and no way to outrun them if they decide to fire." Chen nodded grimly. Through the main viewports, she could see the HFY station growing larger as they approached. It was massive, easily 10 times the size of any human structure. Docking ports lined its hull like the mouths of hungry beasts, and sleek warships patrolled its perimeter. 20 minutes later, Chen found herself standing in what the aliens called a processing center. The room was enormous, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. Hundreds of humans had been herded into groups, their faces showing mixtures of fear, confusion, and barely contained rage. Commander Zixthul stood on a raised platform, flanked by a dozen other species Chen didn't recognize. Some had multiple tentacles instead of arms, others looked like walking crystals, and a few seemed to be made of living metal. All of them looked down at the humans with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright contempt. "Attention! Unregistered beings!" Zixthul began, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You are now subjects of the Galactic Collective. Your vessel has been impounded, and you will be assigned work details based on your physical capabilities." A murmur of protest rippled through the crowd, but Zixthul continued. "However, the Collective is not without mercy. We have ancient laws that allow for trial by combat. Should any among you wish to challenge the processing order, you may do so according to the traditional rules." Chen stepped forward. "What kind of trial by combat?" "Simple," Zixthul replied. his three eyes focusing on her with predatory interest. One of your kind faces one of ours in single combat. If your champion wins, your entire group gains temporary protected status and the right to negotiate. If your champion loses—" He paused dramatically. "Your species is classified as conquest eligible, and you become property of the collective." The chamber fell deadly silent. Chen felt the weight of 1,500 lives pressing down on her shoulders. "What are the rules?" Rule 1. Combat continues until death or surrender. Rule 2. No weapons beyond what your own body provides. Rule 3. The arena judges all disputes. Zixthul's mandibles clicked again. "These rules have governed galactic law for 10,000 years. They ensure that only the strong survive to pollute the gene pool." A reptilian creature near Zixthul stepped forward. It was even larger than the commander, with bone spikes protruding from its shoulders and arms. "I am Champion Karvesh of the Drakari Empire. I have killed representatives of 47 species in this very arena." The creature's voice was like grinding stone. "Your soft pink flesh will barely provide sport." Chen looked around desperately at her crew. Most were scientists, engineers, and explorers, not fighters. A few had military training, but none looked like they could stand against the monster that had just volunteered to kill them all. "I need a volunteer," she announced, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. "Ma'am?" A voice spoke from the back of the group, and the crowd parted as a figure walked forward. Chen's heart sank as she saw who it was: Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, one of the ship's security officers. He was a good man and a decent fighter, but he was only human. Rodriguez stopped in front of her and snapped off a crisp salute. "Permission to volunteer, Captain." Chen wanted to say no, wanted to find another way, but she could see the determination in his eyes. More importantly, she could see that no one else was stepping forward. "Sergeant, you understand what this means?" "Yes, ma'am. If I lose, we all become slaves. If I win, we get a chance to negotiate our freedom." Rodriguez looked past her at the alien champion. "I've been in worse spots." Chen doubted that, but she nodded anyway. "Permission granted, Sergeant." "Give them hell." As Rodriguez walked toward the arena entrance, Karvesh laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "This should be amusing. I have not faced such a weak opponent in cycles." The arena itself was a circular pit about 50 feet across, surrounded by rising tiers of seats filled with various alien species. The floor was covered in sand that had been stained dark with the blood of countless previous combatants. Ancient symbols were carved into the walls, and Chen realized with a chill that this place had been used for exactly this purpose for millennia. Rodriguez stood at one end of the arena, rolling his shoulders and stretching his neck. At 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, he was in excellent shape for a human. Against the 9-foot-tall alien monster across from him, he looked like a child. Zixthul's voice boomed across the arena. "Let it be recorded that Champion Karvesh of the Drakari Empire faces the unnamed representative of the unregistered human species. Combat begins on my signal." The alien champion raised his arms, revealing claws that gleamed like metal in the arena lights. His reptilian hide looked thick enough to stop bullets, and the bone spikes covering his body could easily punch through human flesh. "Before we begin," Karvesh called out, his voice dripping with condescension, "I want your pathetic species to understand something. I have studied your kind during your short time here. You are weak, slow, and fragile. Your only advantage might have been your primitive weapons, but Rule 2 eliminates that possibility." The creature's 3 eyes glittered with malicious glee. "You forgot Rule 2, little human? No weapons means you die like the animal you are." Rodriguez said nothing, just continued his stretching routine. Chen noticed he was favoring his left leg slightly, an old injury from his military days that still bothered him sometimes. Your silence amuses me, Karvesh continued. Perhaps you are finally understanding your hopeless situation. I have killed Thraxian berserkers with my bare claws. I have torn apart cetacean warriors twice your size. What can one small, soft human possibly do against— Are you going to keep talking or are we going to fight? Rodriguez interrupted, his voice calm and steady. The arena fell silent. Even Zixthul looked surprised at the human's casual tone. Karvesh's eyes blazed with fury. Impudent worm! I will tear you apart slowly for that insult. Looking forward to it, Rodriguez replied, settling into a fighting stance that looked almost casual to the watching aliens. Chen found herself holding her breath as Zixthul raised his hand. Combat begins! Karvesh charged immediately, his massive form covering the distance between them in 3 powerful strides. His claws swept down in an arc that would have disemboweled a normal opponent. But Rodriguez wasn't there anymore. The human had moved at the last possible second, sliding under the alien's attack and coming up behind him. As Karvesh stumbled past, confused by his opponent's sudden disappearance, Rodriguez drove his elbow into the back of the creature's knee. It was like hitting a tree trunk. But the alien stumbled slightly. More importantly, the watching crowd gasped in surprise. Apparently making Karvesh stumble at all was an impressive feat. Impossible, one of the aliens in the crowd whispered loud enough for Chen to hear. The human is too slow to move like that. But Chen was beginning to smile. She'd seen Rodriguez train, and she knew something the aliens didn't. Mike Rodriguez wasn't just a security officer. He was a former Force Recon Marine with 3 combat deployments. More than that, he was a student of multiple martial arts, including several that emphasized using an opponent's size and strength against them. Karvesh spun around with surprising speed for such a large creature, but again Rodriguez had already moved. This time he was to the alien's left, and he landed a quick combination of punches to what looked like a vulnerable spot just below the creature's ribs. The punches barely seemed to affect the heavily armored alien, but they served their purpose. They made Karvesh angry. The creature roared and launched into a series of increasingly wild attacks, each one powerful enough to kill Rodriguez instantly if it connected. None of them connected. Rodriguez moved like water, flowing around the alien's attacks with an economy of motion that was beautiful to watch. He wasn't trying to power through the creature's defenses. He was studying them, looking for weaknesses, learning his opponent's patterns. Stand still and die, Karvesh bellowed, his attacks becoming more frantic. Not really my style, Rodriguez replied, landing another series of precise strikes to the same spot he'd hit before. Chen could see the strategy now. Rodriguez couldn't hurt the alien with conventional attacks, so he was focusing on one specific area, trying to find a way through that thick hide. It was smart, but it was also dangerous. Every second this fight continued was another chance for those lethal claws to find their mark. The watching crowd was murmuring now, their voices carrying notes of confusion and growing concern. Whatever they'd expected to see, it wasn't a human making their champion look clumsy and frustrated. Rodriguez continued his dance, staying just out of reach while landing pinpoint strikes to the same vulnerable spot. After the 15th or 16th hit to the same area, Chen finally saw what he'd been working toward. A small trickle of dark blood appeared on the alien's hide. Karvesh noticed it too and backed away, his breathing heavy. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in his 3 eyes. This is not possible. Your species lacks the strength to penetrate Drakari hide. Rodriguez wiped sweat from his forehead and grinned. You know what your problem is? You've been fighting other aliens for so long, you forgot how to fight something that doesn't fight like you. What are you talking about, human? Every species you've faced probably tried to match you strength for strength, right? Probably came at you head-on, trying to overpower you. Rodriguez began circling again, and Chen noticed his movements were getting more fluid, not less. He was warming up. That's not how humans learn to fight. We learn to hunt things bigger and stronger than us by being smarter, not stronger. Karavesh charged again, but this time Rodriguez was ready. Instead of dodging to the side, he dropped flat and rolled between the creature's legs, coming up behind him and immediately targeting the same wounded spot with a series of rapid strikes. This time, the blood flow was more than a trickle. Humans don't just fight, Rodriguez continued, as he avoided another increasingly desperate attack. We problem solve, and you, my friend, are a problem I'm about to solve. The arena was dead silent now, except for the sounds of combat. Chen could see the other alien species watching with growing alarm as their supposedly invincible champion struggled against a single human. Then Rodriguez made his move. As Karavesh lunged forward with both sets of claws extended, Rodriguez didn't dodge. Instead, he stepped into the attack, grabbed one of the alien's wrists, and used the creature's own momentum to throw him across the arena in a perfect judo hip toss. Karavesh hit the arena wall with enough force to crack the ancient stone. He lay still for a moment, clearly stunned, and Rodriguez was on him instantly. But instead of going for a killing blow, the human grabbed the alien's injured arm and twisted it into what Chen recognized as an armbar, a joint lock that could snap bones if enough pressure was applied. "Surrender," Rodriguez said quietly, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. Karavesh struggled for a moment, then screamed as Rodriguez increased the pressure. "Never! I am a champion of the Drakari Empire! I do not surrender to prey!" "Wrong answer," Rodriguez replied, and applied just enough additional pressure to dislocate the alien's shoulder. The scream that followed echoed off the arena walls like the cry of a dying god. "Surrender," Rodriguez repeated, his voice still calm. This time, Karavesh's voice was broken and defeated. I surrender." Rodriguez released the hold immediately and stepped back, raising his hands to show he was no longer a threat. The arena remained silent for several long heartbeats. Finally, Zixthul's voice rang out, though it lacked its previous confidence. "By ancient law, the human champion has achieved victory. The humans are granted temporary protected status." Chen felt her knees go weak with relief, but she forced herself to remain standing as Rodriguez climbed out of the arena. The other humans erupted in cheers, but the alien observers remained ominously quiet. As Rodriguez reached her side, Chen grabbed his arm. "That was incredible, Sergeant. How did you know you could beat him?" Rodriguez shrugged, wincing slightly as adrenaline wore off, and he began to feel the bruises he'd accumulated. "I didn't, ma'am. But I figured if I was going to die anyway, I might as well make it interesting." Chen was about to respond when Zixthul's voice cut through the celebration. "Do not think this changes anything significant, humans. You have bought yourselves time. Nothing more. In 7 solar cycles, you must present your case to the Galactic Council. Until then, you will remain as guests aboard this station." The commander's 3 eyes fixed on Rodriguez with something that might have been respect. "Your champion fought well, but he fought only one opponent. The council will want to see if humanity has other surprises." As the aliens began to disperse, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that Rodriguez's victory had done more than just buy them time. The way the other species had watched the fight, the uncertainty in their voices, it was as if they'd never seen anything quite like what the human had just accomplished. She had a feeling that humanity's introduction to the galactic community was far from over. 7 days had passed since Rodriguez's victory in the arena, and Captain Chen was beginning to understand that humanity's problems were far from solved. The temporary guest quarters on Kethvar Station were comfortable enough, but they were still essentially prisoners. Worse, the other alien species seemed to be watching them with a mixture of curiosity and calculation that made Chen's skin crawl. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres called from across the common area, where most of the senior staff had gathered. You need to see this. Chen walked over to where Torres was studying a data pad that had been provided by their alien hosts. The device was surprisingly intuitive to use, despite being designed for beings with completely different anatomy than humans. "What am I looking at?" Chen asked. "Records of previous first contacts," Torres replied grimly. "It seems we're not the first species to stumble into galactic space uninvited." The datapad showed a scrolling list of species names, dates, and outcomes. Chen felt her stomach drop as she read through them. The Yalendi, extinct after refusing to comply with galactic mining quotas. The Breltari, enslaved after their champion lost in the arena. The Zenthors, relocated to prison worlds after attempting to negotiate from a position of weakness. "Jesus," Chen whispered. "How many species have they destroyed?" 43 in the last 2,000 years, Torres answered. "And, Captain? Every single one of them went through the same process we're going through now. Arena combat, temporary protection status, then a hearing before the Galactic Council. Any of them make it through successfully?" Torres scrolled through more data. 12 species gained limited membership status, but look at what they had to give up. Chen read the terms and felt sick. Military technology, mining rights to their home systems, population controls, mandatory genetic modification programs. The list went on and on. Even the successful species had essentially become vassals of the Galactic Collective. "There's something else," Torres added quietly. "I've been monitoring communications traffic on the station. There are delegations from 17 different species here for our hearing. That's apparently unusual. Most first contact hearings only draw 3 or 4 observers." Before Chen could respond, the main door to their quarters chimed. Commander Zixthul entered, flanked by 2 guards Chen hadn't seen before. These new aliens were even more imposing than the reptilian Drakari. They looked like walking tanks made of crystalline material, and they moved with perfect synchronization. "Captain Chen," Zixthul announced. "You and your senior staff will accompany me to meet with Counselor Veltar. She wishes to discuss your upcoming hearing." Chen exchanged glances with her officers. "And if we refuse?" "Then your temporary protection status will be revoked immediately," Zixthul replied matter-of-factly. "I should mention that Counselor Veltar is considered moderate in her views toward new species. You would be wise to make a good impression." 20 minutes later, Chen found herself in what was clearly the most luxurious section of the station. The corridors here were wider, the lighting was softer, and the walls were covered with what looked like art from dozens of different civilizations. Some of it was beautiful, some was disturbing, and some was completely incomprehensible to human eyes. They were led to a circular chamber with a domed ceiling that showed a real-time view of the space outside the station. Chen could see their crippled ship in the distance, looking tiny and pathetic compared to the alien vessels that surrounded it. Counselor Veltar was waiting for them, and Chen was surprised by the aliens' appearance. Unlike the imposing warriors they'd encountered so far, Veltar looked almost delicate. She stood about 5 feet tall, with pale blue skin and large, expressive eyes. Her forearms ended in long, graceful fingers, and when she spoke, her voice had a musical quality that was strangely soothing. "Captain Chen," Veltar said, "welcome to Kethavar Station. I trust your accommodations have been adequate?" "They've been fine, thank you," Chen replied carefully. "Though I'm hoping our stay will be brief." Veltar's expression, or what Chen interpreted as an expression, seemed amused. "Directness. How refreshing. Most species spend considerable time on pleasantries before addressing their situation." She gestured for them to sit on what were apparently chairs designed for various alien anatomies. "Your champion's victory in the arena has caused quite a stir, Captain." "So I've heard." "I wonder if you understand why," Veltar continued. "Karvesh was not simply a skilled fighter. He was genetically engineered for combat, enhanced with the finest biotechnology the Drakari Empire could provide. He has killed champions from species that evolved specifically for warfare. Chen kept her expression neutral. Sergeant Rodriguez is a good soldier. Indeed. Veltar's eyes seemed to study Rodriguez, who stood silently behind Chen's chair. I have reviewed recordings of the combat. Your good soldier displayed capabilities that our xenobiologists insist should be impossible for a baseline organic species. What do you mean? The speed of his reactions, the precision of his movements, the tactical adaptability he demonstrated, these are traits we typically only see in cybernetically enhanced beings or species that have undergone millennia of selective breeding for combat. Veltar paused. Yet our scans confirm that your sergeant is entirely baseline biological. No enhancements, no genetic modification, no cybernetic implants. Chen was beginning to understand where this was leading. You think we're lying about something? Not lying, necessarily, but perhaps not sharing the complete truth. Veltar leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Captain, what is your species' natural lifespan? The question seemed to come from nowhere. About 80 years on average, though some live longer. Fascinating. Most species with your sergeant's demonstrated capabilities have lifespans measured in centuries. How long does it take a human to reach physical maturity? Around 18 years. This time, Veltar's surprise was obvious. 18 years? Your champion achieved his skill level in less than 2 decades of development? Chen glanced at Rodriguez, who nodded slightly. Sergeant Rodriguez is 34 years old. He's been training in various forms of combat since he was 8. Impossible, Veltar whispered. The neuroplasticity required for such rapid skill acquisition would be... She trailed off, and Chen could practically see the calculations running behind the alien's large eyes. Counselor, Chen said carefully, is there something about our biology that concerns you? Veltar was quiet for a long moment, then stood and walked to a wall display that showed what looked like biological data. Captain, in the 3,000 years since the Galactic Collective was established, we have encountered over 200 sentient species. We have developed very precise models for predicting a species' potential based on their physical characteristics, development patterns, and social structures. And, according to our models, humans should be a below-average species. Your physical strength is unremarkable. Your sensory capabilities are limited. Your individual lifespans are quite short. Veltar turned back to them. Yet your champion defeated one of our finest warriors, using nothing but baseline biological capabilities and something our models cannot quantify: creativity. Chen was starting to see the bigger picture. That's why so many species are here for our hearing. They're not here to judge us. They're here to study us. Very perceptive, Veltar confirmed. Your species represents an unknown variable in equations that have remained constant for millennia. Some council members view this as fascinating. Others view it as threatening. And which are you? Veltar smiled, an expression that somehow translated despite her alien features. I am curious, Captain. Curiosity is a trait that your species seems to share in abundance. Before Chen could respond, an announcement echoed through the chamber in a language she couldn't understand. Veltar's expression became serious. The council session will convene in 1 hour, she translated. Captain, I must warn you, not all council members share my open-mindedness regarding your species. Councillor Thexkar of the Hegemony, in particular, views humanity as a potential threat that should be contained or eliminated. What would you advise? Be honest, but be careful. Some truths are more dangerous than others. Veltar moved toward the chamber exit, then paused. And, Captain, you may want to consider bringing your sergeant to the hearing. The council will want to question him directly. An hour later, Chen found herself standing in the largest chamber she'd ever seen. The Galactic Council amphitheater was enormous, with seating for thousands of beings arranged in concentric circles around a central platform. Representatives from dozens of species filled the seats, and the variety of forms was staggering. Some breathed liquid instead of air, others seemed to be made of living energy, and a few were so alien that Chen couldn't even begin to understand their anatomy. At the center of the amphitheater sat 5 beings on raised thrones, each representing one of the major powers in the Galactic Collective. Chen recognized Veltar, but the others were new to her. "The Council recognizes Captain Sarah Chen of the human species," announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "State your species' claim to protected status." Chen walked to the center platform, acutely aware that thousands of alien eyes were focused on her. Rodriguez and Torres flanked her, while the rest of her senior staff remained in a designated area for human observers. "Honored Council," Chen began, "humanity seeks nothing more than peaceful coexistence with the galactic community. We are explorers, scientists, and builders. Our ship was damaged, and we came here seeking help, not conquest." One of the council members, a massive being that looked like a cross between a spider and a crystal formation, spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "Your words are pleasant, human, but words are easy. Your species' actions in combat suggest a different nature." Chen kept her voice steady. "Sergeant Rodriguez fought to protect my crew. Nothing more. Humans have always defended themselves when threatened, but we prefer peace whenever possible." "Prefer peace?" The spider crystal being's voice carried obvious skepticism. "Yet your champion displayed combat capabilities that suggest extensive preparation for warfare. Do not insult this council with claims of peaceful intent." Another council member leaned forward. This one resembled a massive mantis with too many eyes. "Human Captain, your species' rapid development concerns us. Most sapient races require centuries to achieve the combat proficiency your sergeant demonstrated. How do you explain this acceleration?" Chen had been dreading this question. How could she explain humanity's history of constant warfare, of species-wide conflicts that had driven rapid technological and tactical advancement? How could she make them understand that humans hadn't chosen to become warriors? They'd been forced to become survivors. "Counselor," she said finally, "humanity evolved on a world that was challenging. Our environment forced us to adapt quickly or die. That ability to adapt has served us well." "Challenging how?" The mantis being's compound eyes glittered with interest. Chen took a deep breath. This was dangerous territory, but Veltar had advised honesty. "Our world has predators that hunt us, diseases that kill us, and natural disasters that can destroy entire regions. We learned to work together and think creatively because that was the only way to survive." A murmur ran through the assembled aliens. Chen could hear surprise in their voices, though she couldn't understand their words. The spider crystal being spoke again. "You claim your species achieved sapience while still functioning as prey animals?" "In a sense, yes. We were never the strongest or fastest species on our world. We survived by being smarter and more adaptable." This time the murmur was louder, and Chen could hear what sounded like alarm in some of the voices. The 5th council member spoke for the first time, a being that seemed to be made of flowing liquid metal. "Human Captain, are you saying that your species developed sentience and technology while under constant external pressure?" "That's correct." "And your species' response to this pressure was to develop enhanced combat capabilities and rapid adaptation skills?" Chen was beginning to understand why this line of questioning was making the aliens nervous. "Among other things, yes." The liquid metal being exchanged what might have been glances with the other council members. "Captain Chen, In the galactic community, most species achieve sapience only after they become the dominant life form on their worlds. Predator species typically develop intelligence to better coordinate hunting, while prey species develop it to better avoid predation. Your species appears to have achieved sapience while remaining both predator and prey simultaneously. I suppose that's accurate, Chen confirmed, though she was beginning to wish she'd been less honest. The spider crystal being's voice was sharp with concern. Such evolutionary pressure typically produces one of two outcomes: extinction or the development of extreme aggressive tendencies, yet your captain claims to prefer peace. This contradiction concerns us greatly. Before Chen could respond, another voice cut across the chamber, harsh and commanding. A new figure was rising from the observer sections, and Chen immediately understood this had to be Counselor Thexkar. The being was enormous, easily 12 feet tall, with 6 powerful arms and skin that looked like living armor. When he spoke, his voice carried absolute authority. "Enough of this dance around the obvious truth," Thexkar declared. "These humans are a warrior species that has learned to hide their true nature behind claims of peaceful intent. Their champion's victory proves that they possess capabilities we have never encountered in a baseline biological species." Thexkar stepped into the speaking area, and Chen felt suddenly small. "I move that the humans be classified as a Class 7 threat species and subjected to immediate containment protocols." The chamber erupted in discussion, dozens of voices speaking in languages Chen couldn't understand. She caught fragments that had been translated. Unprecedented, dangerous, unknown variables. Veltar's voice cut through the chaos. "Counselor Thexkar, that classification requires proof of aggressive intent. The humans have shown no such intent. Have they not?" Thexkar's 6 arms gestured dramatically. "They appeared in our space without warning in a vessel that our scans revealed contained military personnel, advanced sensor equipment, and what could only be weapon manufacturing facilities. When challenged, they immediately resorted to combat rather than attempting diplomatic solutions." Chen wanted to protest, but she realized that from the aliens' perspective, Thexkar's interpretation wasn't entirely wrong. The Destiny's Edge was an exploration vessel, but it had been equipped with military-grade sensors and defensive capabilities. Rodriguez was indeed military, and the ship's fabrication facilities could potentially be used to produce weapons. Furthermore, Thexkar continued, their champion's fighting style showed clear evidence of training specifically designed to defeat larger, stronger opponents. This suggests their species has developed tactics for fighting beings more powerful than themselves, a clear indication of predatory expansionist intent. Chen's heart sank as she heard murmurs of agreement from around the chamber. Thexkar was twisting their survival instincts into evidence of malicious intent. "I object," she called out, but Thexkar ignored her. "The evidence is clear," he declared. "Humans are a species optimized for warfare against superior opponents. They have achieved in decades what takes other species centuries, and they did so while claiming to prefer peace. Such deception is intolerable." The Liquid Metal Council member spoke carefully. "Counselor Thexkar raises valid concerns. However, classification as a Class 7 threat requires unanimous council approval, which I am prepared to call for," Thexkar replied confidently. "Unless, of course, the humans can provide evidence that contradicts the obvious conclusion about their nature." Chen felt trapped. Everything they'd revealed about human adaptability and combat capability was being used as evidence against them. She looked at Rodriguez, who gave her a slight nod. He was ready to fight again if necessary, but they both knew that wouldn't solve the underlying problem. Then she heard Torres whisper behind her, "Captain, remember what you told me about human history? Maybe it's time to tell them the whole truth." Chen blinked, then understanding dawned. She'd been trying to present humanity in the best possible light, but maybe that was the wrong approach. Maybe what these aliens needed to hear wasn't how peaceful humans could be, but why they'd learn to be peaceful despite their capabilities. "Counselor Thexkar," she called out, her voice carrying clearly across the chamber. "You're absolutely right about one thing. Humans are warriors. But you're wrong about why that matters." The chamber fell silent, and Chen could feel every alien eye focusing on her. "You want to know the truth about humanity?" she continued. "The truth is that we spent 10,000 years fighting each other before we learned to fight together. The truth is that we developed all those combat capabilities you're so worried about by using them on ourselves." She gestured to Rodriguez. "Sergeant Rodriguez isn't dangerous because humans are naturally aggressive. He's dangerous because we learned the hard way what happens when aggression isn't tempered by wisdom. We've seen what we're capable of when we give in to our worst instincts, and we decided we never wanted to see it again." Chen looked directly at Thexkar. "You say we're deceptive because we claim to prefer peace while possessing warrior capabilities, but that's not deception. That's growth. We're not peaceful despite being warriors. We're peaceful because we're warriors, and we know exactly what the alternative looks like." The chamber remained silent, but Chen could see she had their attention. Now she just had to convince them that a species of reformed warriors might be exactly what the galaxy needed. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber stretched on for what felt like hours. Chen could see the alien representatives exchanging glances, their body language suggesting heated discussion despite the lack of audible conversation. Finally, Veltar spoke. "Captain Chen, you speak of your species learning from warfare. Elaborate on this claim." Chen took a deep breath. This was humanity's last chance, and she knew she had to get it right. "Counselors, for most of human history we fought constant wars, not against other species, against ourselves. Tribe against tribe, nation against nation, ideology against ideology. We developed our combat capabilities because we used them on each other for thousands of years." She gestured toward the massive view screen that showed the stars beyond the station. "We didn't reach the stars because we were peaceful explorers. We reached them because we finally realized that our own world had become too small for our conflicts. We had two choices: learn to work together or destroy ourselves." The mantis-like counselor leaned forward. "And you chose cooperation? How?" "The hard way," Rodriguez spoke for the first time, his voice carrying clearly across the chamber. "We nearly wiped ourselves out first." All eyes turned to the sergeant, and Chen nodded for him to continue. 2 centuries ago, we fought a war that killed over 1 billion people in 6 years, Rodriguez said quietly. "Not with the weapons you've seen us use, with weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds, weapons that could poison the land for generations, weapons that made the planet itself uninhabitable in some places." A shocked murmur ran through the assembled aliens. Several species representatives looked genuinely horrified. Rodriguez continued, his voice steady. "When that war ended, humans had to make a choice. We could keep building bigger weapons and fighting bigger wars until we were all dead. Or we could find another way. We chose another way." Thexkar's voice cut across the chamber like a blade. "You speak of ancient history, human. Your current capabilities suggest you have not abandoned warfare, merely hidden it behind prettier words." "You're right," Chen admitted. "We haven't abandoned our capacity for warfare. But we've learned to direct it outward instead of inward." "Explain." Chen walked to the center of the speaking platform. "Counselor Thexkar, you said our ship contains military personnel and weapon manufacturing capabilities. You're correct, but you're wrong about why." She activated the datapad Torres had given her, and holographic images filled the air above the platform. "These are images from our home system, our world, our space stations, our colonies." The images showed Earth in all its blue-green glory, massive orbital habitats, thriving colonies on Mars, and the moons of the outer planets. But they also showed something else: defensive installations, patrol ships, and clear signs of military preparedness. We maintain these defenses not because we plan to attack anyone, Chen explained, but because we learned that peace requires the ability to defend it. Our history taught us that those who cannot protect themselves will always be at the mercy of those who can. Veltar studied the images carefully. Your species achieved interplanetary colonization while maintaining this defensive posture? Yes, because we learned that the alternative to defending peace is losing it. Chen changed the display to show historical images from humanity's wars. These images show what happens when humans fight each other. We keep these records not as celebrations, but as reminders of what we never want to become again. The images were devastating: cities in ruins, refugee camps, mass graves, but they also showed something else: humans helping other humans, rebuilding together, choosing cooperation over continued conflict. The liquid metal counselor spoke thoughtfully. You maintain warrior capabilities as insurance against reverting to your previous behavioral patterns? That's part of it, Chen confirmed. But there's more. We learned that peace isn't just the absence of war. It's the active choice to resolve conflicts without violence. And sometimes that choice only works when both parties know that violence is possible but has been deliberately rejected. Rodriguez stepped forward. In the arena, I could have killed Karvesh. My training included lethal techniques that would have ended the fight much sooner. But I chose not to use them because victory through restraint is more meaningful than victory through destruction. Karvesh himself suddenly spoke from the observer section, his voice carrying despite his injuries. The human speaks truth. I felt his capability to kill, but he chose to defeat rather than destroy. This is not the behavior of a typical predator species. Thexkar's 6 arms gestured dismissively. Pretty words and careful examples prove nothing. How do we know your species will not revert to its violent nature when faced with significant challenges? Chen smiled grimly. Because, Counselor, we've already been tested. How so? Our ship wasn't damaged in an accident. We were attacked. The chamber erupted in surprised voices. Even the council members seemed shocked by this revelation. Chen continued over the noise. 3 weeks ago, as we were conducting our first survey mission beyond our solar system, we encountered a species we'd never seen before. They attacked without warning, without attempts at communication, and without mercy. She changed the holographic display to show battle damage on the Destiny's Edge. They destroyed our escort ships, killed over 200 of my crew, and left us drifting in space. We had 2 choices: fight back with everything we had, or try to escape and find help. And you chose to run? Thexkar's voice carried obvious disdain. We chose to survive, Rodriguez corrected firmly, because dead heroes don't save anyone. Chen nodded. Our attackers followed us for days, continuing to fire on a clearly disabled ship. They had every advantage: better weapons, faster ships, overwhelming numbers. Under the old human way of thinking, we would have fought to the death and taken as many of them with us as possible. But you didn't, Veltar observed. No. Instead, we used every trick we knew to stay ahead of them long enough to reach this station. We sacrificed our weapons to boost our engines. We jettisoned everything non-essential to gain speed. We chose survival over revenge, even though many of my crew wanted to fight. Chen looked directly at Thexkar. You want to know if humans can resist their violent nature when faced with significant challenges? We already did. We had every justification for warfare. We were attacked without provocation. Our people were murdered, and we had the capability to make our attackers pay dearly for what they'd done. But we chose to seek help rather than seek vengeance. The chamber was completely silent now. Even Thexkar seemed to be reconsidering his position. Rodriguez spoke again, his voice calm but carrying an undertone of steel. Counselors, you've been asking the wrong question about humanity. You keep asking if we're dangerous, and the answer is yes. We're very dangerous. But the real question is whether we're wise enough to control that danger, and our entire history for the last 2 centuries has been about proving that we are. Torres stepped forward from the human observer section. If I may, counselors, I'd like to add something. Veltar nodded permission. I'm the Destiny's Edge's chief engineer, Torres began. During our escape from the attackers, we had multiple opportunities to use our manufacturing capabilities to build weapons. Our fabrication systems could have produced nuclear devices, chemical weapons, even biological agents. The knowledge was all there in our databases. She paused, looking around the chamber. We didn't build a single offensive weapon. Instead, we used those same capabilities to build better shields, more efficient engines, and medical supplies for our wounded. When humans have to choose between creating tools of destruction or tools of survival, we choose survival every time. The Spider Crystal Counselor's voice carried a note of wonder. Your species possesses the knowledge to create such devastating weapons, yet chooses not to use it? Not just chooses not to use it, Chen corrected. We've actively chosen to prevent others from using it. One of humanity's primary diplomatic initiatives in our own system is nuclear disarmament and the prevention of weapons proliferation. Thexkar was quiet for a long moment, then spoke carefully. Human Captain, you paint a picture of your species that seems almost too ideal to believe. How do we know this presentation is not simply sophisticated deception? Before Chen could answer, an alarm began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed, and automated voices began speaking in multiple languages. Through the chaos, Chen heard one phrase that chilled her blood, the same species designation that had been attached to their attackers. Zixthul burst into the chamber, his usual composure completely gone. Council emergency. The Devourers have entered this system with a full war fleet. They're demanding the surrender of the human survivors. The chamber erupted in panic. Chen watched as representatives from dozens of species began fleeing toward the exits, their fear obvious despite the differences in their biology. How many ships? Veltar demanded. 47, Zixthul replied, including 3 planet killers. They've already destroyed 2 of our outer defense platforms. Thexkar rose to his full, imposing height. The humans have led them here. This is exactly what I warned against. But Chen was already moving. She strode to the central platform and activated the communication system. All human personnel, this is Captain Chen, emergency stations code black. We are no longer guests. We are defenders. She turned to face the council. Counselors, you want to see what humans do when faced with a real threat? You're about to find out. Captain, Veltar said urgently, your ship is barely functional. Your crew numbers fewer than 1,500 against a full Devourer war fleet. What can you possibly accomplish? Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. Counselor, you've spent this entire hearing trying to figure out whether humans are dangerous. The Devourers are about to provide you with a definitive answer. She turned to Rodriguez. Sergeant, gather all security personnel. I want every human with military experience armed and ready. Ma'am, we don't have any weapons, Rodriguez pointed out. Then we'll make some, Torres interjected. Captain, I can have the fabrication systems producing small arms within an hour. Do it, Chen ordered, then turned back to the council. Counselors, I'm offering the services of my crew in defense of this station. We may not have the biggest guns or the fastest ships, but we have something the Devourers don't expect. Experience fighting impossible odds. Thexkar's voice carried grudging respect. You would fight alongside us? After the way you have been treated here? Counselor, Chen replied, you've been trying to determine whether humans can be trusted as allies. This is your chance to find out. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Chen watched as her crew transformed from defeated refugees into a fighting force with frightening efficiency. Rodriguez organized the security teams and began training alien volunteers in human combat techniques. Torres worked miracles with the fabrication systems, producing not just weapons but armor, explosives, and electronic warfare devices that the station's defenders had never seen before. But it was the strategy session that truly opened the aliens' eyes to what humans could accomplish. "The Devourer fleet is positioned here," Zixthul explained, pointing to a tactical display. "They're maintaining standard siege formation. Heavy ships in the center, fast attack craft on the flanks, support vessels in the rear." Chen studied the display for a moment, then looked at her senior staff. "Thoughts?" "Classic hammer and anvil," Rodriguez observed. "They plan to pin us here while their heavy ships pound the station into submission." "Agreed," Torres added. "But look at their formation spacing. They're assuming we'll either surrender or fight them conventionally. They're not expecting asymmetric tactics." Chen nodded, then turned to the alien commanders. "Commander Zixthul, what are your current defensive capabilities?" "Minimal," he admitted reluctantly. "This is primarily a civilian station. We have 18 patrol craft and defensive batteries designed for pirate interdiction, not fleet combat." "Good," Chen said, surprising everyone. "Good?" Thexkar demanded. "How is being outgunned 40-1 good?" Chen's smile was predatory. "Because, Counselor, they're expecting a conventional battle. They're not expecting humans." Over the next hour, Chen outlined a battle plan that left the alien commanders staring in disbelief. It involved using the station's civilian ships as improvised weapons, turning the defensive batteries into mobile platforms, and employing psychological warfare tactics that the Devourers had never encountered. "This plan is insane," Zixthul declared. "Probably," Chen agreed. "But insanity is just another word for thinking differently than your enemy expects." The battle, when it came, was unlike anything the galactic community had ever witnessed. The Devourers approached expecting either immediate surrender or a brief, decisive engagement. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that refused to follow conventional rules of warfare. Civilian transports loaded with explosives rammed their capital ships. Fighters that should have been easily destroyed proved impossible to pin down, using maneuvers that violated every principle of safe space combat. Defensive positions that should have been overwhelmed kept functioning long after they should have been destroyed. But it was the final phase of the battle that truly demonstrated what humans were capable of. When the Devourer flagship broke through the outer defenses and began its final approach to the station, Chen made a decision that no alien commander would have considered. She ordered the Destiny's Edge, still barely functional and held together with improvised repairs, to ram the enemy vessel. "Captain," Torres protested, "that's suicide." "No," Chen replied calmly. "That's victory through acceptable sacrifice." What the Devourers didn't know was that Torres had spent the last 6 hours turning the Destiny's Edge into the largest improvised explosive device in galactic history. When the human ship struck the Devourer flagship, the resulting explosion destroyed not only both vessels, but created an electromagnetic pulse that disabled half the remaining enemy fleet. Chen and her senior staff survived only because Rodriguez had insisted on evacuating them to one of the station's shuttles at the last minute. "Ma'am," he'd said, "heroes are most useful when they're alive to tell their stories." In the aftermath of the battle, as the surviving Devourer ships fled the system, the Galactic Council reconvened. The chamber was damaged, many of the representatives were injured, and the atmosphere was completely different from the formal hearing that had taken place just hours before. Thexkar spoke first, his 6 arms hanging limp with exhaustion. "Humans," he said simply, "I owe your species an apology." Chen, her uniform torn and blackened with smoke, nodded acknowledgement. Counselor, you were right to be cautious. Humans are dangerous, but today, that danger served the cause of peace. Veltar rose from her damaged council seat. Captain Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Collective, I offer humanity full membership status with no restrictions or obligations beyond mutual defense and trade agreements. Counselor, Chen replied, speaking for humanity I accept, but I want to make something clear. We're not joining your community to take from it. We're joining to give to it. She gestured toward the viewports where the wreckage of the battle still glowed in the station's lights. Today, you saw what humans can do when we're cornered and fighting for survival. But that's not who we want to be. We want to be the species that helps others avoid the fights we've already learned how to win. Rodriguez stepped forward. If I may, counselors, I'd like to share something my grandfather told me when I was young. He said, "The strongest people aren't those who show strength in front of us, but those who win battles we know nothing about." He looked around the chamber at the assembled alien representatives. Humans have been fighting battles you know nothing about for our entire history. Battles against our own worst instincts, against the temptation to solve every problem with violence, against the idea that might makes right. We've won most of those battles, and we're still fighting the rest. Chen nodded. What Sergeant Rodriguez is saying is that humanity's greatest victory wasn't what you saw today. It was the decision, made centuries ago, to stop fighting each other and start fighting our problems together. Thexkar stood slowly, his massive frame still imposing despite his injuries. Captain Chen, I have one final question. Yes? When your ship was attacking the Devourer flagship, you could have targeted their life support systems or their power core. Either choice would have resulted in total destruction with minimal risk to your crew. Instead, you chose a ramming attack that put your own people in maximum danger. Why? Chen was quiet for a moment, then smiled sadly. Because, Counselor, the goal wasn't just to stop the Devourers. The goal was to make sure they understood that some lines should never be crossed. When you attack civilians, when you show no mercy to the defeated, when you refuse all attempts at peaceful resolution, that's when you discover that the universe contains people who will stop you, no matter the cost to themselves. Even at the cost of your own life? Especially at the cost of our own lives, Rodriguez answered. That's what separates warriors from bullies, Counselor. Warriors fight for something bigger than themselves. Bullies just fight. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Veltar spoke. The Galactic Collective has existed for 3,000 years, and in all that time we have never encountered a species quite like humanity. You possess the capability for devastating violence, yet you consistently choose restraint. You have every reason to demand compensation for your losses here today, yet you ask for nothing but the chance to help others. She paused, looking directly at Chen. Captain, I believe humanity will bring something to our community that we have been missing for far too long. The reminder that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to know when not to. Chen nodded respectfully. Counselor, we're honored to join the galactic community. But I hope you understand, we're not here to change who we are. We're here to help others become who they want to be. As the council session ended and the long work of rebuilding began, Chen stood at the observation deck of Kethvar Station, looking out at the stars. Torres joined her, along with Rodriguez and several other members of her crew. Think it'll work, Captain? Torres asked. This whole Galactic Alliance thing? Chen was quiet for a moment, watching as human and alien work crews labored side by side to repair the station's damage. I think, Lieutenant, that for the first time in human history, we've found a fight worth winning that doesn't require us to destroy our enemies. Rodriguez chuckled. Ma'am, with respect, I think you've been spending too much time with diplomats. That sounded almost philosophical. Maybe, Chen admitted. But Rodriguez, Remember what that alien champion said in the arena? He said we forgot Rule 2. No weapons beyond what our bodies provide? Yes, ma'am. Chen smiled, watching as a human engineer showed an alien technician how to improve the efficiency of their repair tools. He was wrong. He forgot the most important thing about humans. Our greatest weapon isn't our strength or our speed or our technology. It's our ability to turn enemies into allies. She looked at her crew, these people who had chosen to risk everything for strangers they'd never met. That's what humans do, and that's what we'll teach the galaxy. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is to make sure it never happens in the first place. As the stars wheeled overhead and the work of building a better future continued below, Captain Sarah Chen knew that humanity had finally found its place in the universe, not as conquerors or victims, but as the species that would teach the galaxy that the strongest warriors are those who fight for peace.